So I have about 7 videos on this channel. One of them has 1,000 views because it was on the Kickstarter. We're still in the space where we're really small. What that means to me is that I can do anything that I want creatively. That's a really nice space to be in. So like 3 or 4 out of these 7 videos that are on the channel so far are about design philosophy with regard to board game design, not like the color wheel and how to make a website or anything. And I've talked about, I've even reached so deep that I've got into my philosophy school background so long ago and talked about Aristotle just a touch, courage and wisdom, my take on it and how that affected my design goals with Glory. I made a game to interact with some artistic values. I didn't have some design theory that helped me build a board game. It was kind of reverse, maybe 50-50, given that I originally made the game because I wanted to make a role-playing game in about 2005, but I realized how ambitious that was, so I said, making a board game would already be a serious ambition. And I did get it done in 2019, so that's 12 years later. It's pretty serious ambition. Today, I want to take the opportunity, in being an independent businessman in the game space, and I would like it to be partly the art space. I like to think of board games as potential art, at least. I have a lot of respect for the art, which I hope comes through in the game, done by Simon Seen. For this video, I would like to entertain you and tell you more, give you more of an idea of Hogue Publishing by giving an additional philosophical thought on art and what I'm up to in creating Glory, its eventual expansion. This is the first time I've said that out loud. It's in very small print on a couple forums I've been on, but my second product. And to do that, I'm going to be just potentially allowing myself to take a tiny bit of a risk and be a very, very, allow myself to talk about to contrast art and politics. I think going to art galleries, for instance, like traditional concept of art, is really good. It gets at shared human nature. It makes you think things other than with words. Mentation, the use of the mind, and experience and consciousness, it's not all reducible to sentences. I think a moment of wordless reflection would prove that. That begs the question, but is demonstrable in the immediate experience of the listener, I declare. On Twitter, I follow, I can't remember his name now. I don't know him well, but he's the guy who wrote the Doctor Strange movie, and he's done some other creative work, and he's very inspiring on Twitter, always getting you to try to write more. I'm making board games, and I do essay writing that I haven't shared with anybody on, reflections on, well, I'll reveal that another time. But if I'm lucky, one can hope, knock on wood. And he said something that I disagreed with, and I respect him very much, and I've been inspired by him multiply. Lots of times I've been like, okay, read this tweet, let's go do some work. And maybe did some work that I wouldn't have otherwise done if not for him. So he submitted the opinion that I don't know if he said movies are all works of art, but one or the other are always political, whether you want them to be or not. And I disagree, but I more than disagree. I think that art is the cure for politics. And if you're watching this, you're probably a board gamer, and you might agree that when you sit down, different members of families or friends or whatever, and you take away the world and then interact just in the premise of the game, not the premise of the real world, all of that is left behind for a moment, and it is a great depressurization from general politics. I know that this opinion might not be shared by everybody. I hold it. My proof is actually going to be, I was downstairs in the living room the other day, and I have a shared bookshelf with my girlfriend, and she had a book of poems on there, or I didn't know what it was, but it was a book. I didn't know what would be inside it, because on the spine it says, "You haven't asked about my wedding or what I wore," which is a weird spine. That's like a sentence, not a title. Well, it is in this case, but it's unusual. So I picked it out and opened it to a random page, and it turned out there was a book of poems on, poems written by people on the frontier of the United States of America in like the 1800s. And when I read that poem, it struck me that there's no such thing as left or right. It's imposed by us. That's a political, like left and right is normally how we super simply, like 2 pixel count, describe the world by using the language of politics. 2 pixel count. Left, right. Okay, so I like art a lot. I think it does a lot of good. I think it does a lot of good intangibly. You take a field trip of kids out to an art gallery of paintings through the ages, and what good did it do? Nothing measurable. A lot. I mean, it's intangible almost by definition if we're talking about wordlessness, right? Because quantification and articulation are flip sides of a coin, I'd say, right? So I responded to this guy on Twitter. I should remember his name, but I don't. And I disagreed. I said, no way, which, looking back, I don't know if it's always hard to tell in text, not my forte necessarily, whether you come across as playful or as a douchebag. But I said, no way. Storytelling, insofar as a work is storytelling, it depoliticizes. I went on to say, in the next sentence, politics fit into humanity, not the other way around. Sort of, politics is a part of life, human life. It's not that human life is a part of politics. It's these things relate, but we forget which one's the big circle, which one's the small circle. Some people think it's the exact same circle. I disagree, and I think that art is the proof. So I'll try to prove it to you. I could run a bunch of other arguments, maybe. They were really wordy and technical. But instead, let me read you a poem that I don't fully understand, but partly understand, and that you will not fully understand, but may partly understand. And this will demonstrably stand as my argument. When I read this, I'm depoliticized. You know. So, do you ever think you'd listen to a poem? Maybe you won't. Maybe you watch this far and you're going to stop and say, I agree with the argument. If you've come this far, I suggest that you try it out. Art requires a little bit of exercise of patience too, because it's often boredom per second, like units of boredom per second, but then as a whole sticks with you longer, you know? You might watch many TikTok videos, which are really cool, that my girlfriend loves as well. But you go and you watch, A Midsummer Night's Dream once, and you can recall that experience, if not the lines, which you probably understand even less than what I'm about to read. The Stove by Martha Gay Masterson. Oh, I guess this is part of the title. So it says like The Stove, Martha Gay Masterson Remembers. October 28th, 1852. Eugene, Oregon Territory. Here comes Brace Yourself. This poetry. It's unusual. You can do it. The groom arrived late, likewise the parson. No organ, the wedding march a steady patter of rain with a trumpet fanfare of migrating geese. From a side door the bridal party entered. Father could not bear to watch. Mammy had always been his pet. Holding baby Pink close, he paced the dooryard. And I always had Sissy with me. No one else for a friend. How could I live without her? 9 brothers. Pink, age 18 months, was born on the trail that frayed. Ribbon of suffocating dust, the first thing Mammy and I did when camped. Scamper off, always better able to battle snakes by clinging to one another. If we found graves, we'd read their inscriptions. If wolves had broken in, we'd look for the ropey yellow braids of young girls like ourselves. At first we shunned the skulls, sun and storm blemished, scattered everywhere. Finally, we picked one up, another, reading verses. Passers-by had inscriptions across the brain pan. Adding a line or two of our own, we'd place each to attract other emigrants to our handiwork, then move on. Father, mother, 12 children, 1 daughter-in-law, and our Missouri neighbor. September, we crossed the Deschutes, Barlow's Gate, climbed the Cascades in rain, storm footing over rocks, fallen trees, our party so slow others pleaded to pass us by. The tattered oxen fell, rose, fell to rise no more. Everything we could do without cast aside. At Zigzag Creek, Mammy and I fished with pin hooks and thread lines. It was my idea to investigate the old left-behind stove. 6 burners, a rampart of black curlicues. As sister placed the toe of her size 4 shoe on the iron hearth, a drover came up and spoke to her. Another joined in. When they rode away, we heard the first man say, "That slow-eyed girl, I'm going to marry her." We giggled. We hadn't asked her name. He hadn't asked her name. His hair a curly smokestack kin to the stove. A year later, we had a temporary kitchen, 4 posts supporting a roof, our furniture, the wagon boxes where we slept off the ground safe from snakes. I just washed up, hung all cups and milking buckets from the makeshift eaves. The men gone back to mowing when a stranger with a steel wool beard rode in. "Mammy?" he asked, tying his horse to a kitchen post. The horse had whims of his own, snapped his teeth, and seeing a scarecrow where there wasn't one, shied, pulling down our kitchen. Father finished our fireplace and 5-room log house just as Oregon's equinoctial rains began. The day rolled around. Groomsmen, preacher, neighbors filled the whole of our new first floor. The ceremony short, Mammy's happiness sealed. Afterward, at the wedding supper, I told of their first meeting at the old stove, our new rafters ringing when I said, that afternoon by the zigzag, we thought we'd caught no fish. As sister left on horseback, I threw a slipper after her for luck. The wedding march beating against our roof brought me no comfort. We'd not yet planted the stone orchard on the hills behind home. Mammy's daughters, the first to rest there, pink would follow. Though father often warned, life is filled with sunshine and shadow. None of us had learned this then. Don't tell me who you vote for. That's my proof. I like that. I probably get it somewhat wrong, but the story of the stove is the story of meeting that guy, hair like smoke, steel wool beard. They thought they'd caught no fish today. He's the fish. And then suddenly it takes a turn in real life. Death is so much a part of real life. Stone orchard, tombstones. The young die a lot the farther back you go, and they did. And it's a part of life here. It's not a tragedy, except insofar as life was understood as tragic. Sunshine and shadow are a part of life. Whereas nowadays, our expectations are so happily great that the shadows against the sunshine really make us feel like the world has gone wrong, as apart from tragedy being a part of the world. Wow, that was so cool. So that's my argument. And as I continue to do games and publish other materials, art through games, I believe what I'm doing is taking us away from politics and taking us towards art. And so are we all when we're playing these games with each other. Or maybe we can capitalize that on if we play them right, if we understand what we're doing, if we experience it at least somewhat as art, performative art that we're doing with other people. How to play games would be an interesting topic for another video, and I may do that. This one's coming in on 20 minutes. I've enjoyed making this. I don't know how far I'll go with this YouTube channel, so this is a bit of a time capsule if I do more with it. But either or, I definitely get something out of it. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to future videos that you may making future videos that you may also see.